Robbie, what did you make of Rules Don't Apply?
Well, look, something interesting that he said during that interview was that he thinks mass audiences at the cinema have become used to what he called the freedom to demand what we're going to see. In other words, when you leave the house to go to the cinema, you want to know what you're going to get when you get there. Now, the reaction for Rules Don't Apply in the United States, where it was released a few months ago, has been completely all over the place. And I think it's because it 100% doesn't do that. The reviews for the film have been split down the middle. It also struggled to find an audience at the US box office, which is probably why it's on his mind to think of alternatives for distribution. You know, how can we get people to kind of meet this film on its own terms? It looks like you're going to get either a biopic of Howard Hughes or a romance between these two young heartthrobby actors, or a mashup of the two things. And I have to say, when I left the cinema after seeing it for the first time, I've had the benefit of seeing it twice. After the first time, I was completely perplexed by it. It is structurally, tonally eccentric in the extreme. You know, the title applies, I think, to the way in which it's been written and edited every bit as much as it applies to the young couple's love life. At the start, once they've arrived in Hollywood, because it opens with them arriving, as you said, pretty much exactly the same time Beatty himself arrived in real life, the scenes just fly past. It is cut, 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 cut. And you have, dinner, a drive, standing looking at the stars, going to an audition, getting paid, this, that, and the next thing. And it's the sensation is that no kind of real story is cohering because life is flying past too quickly in order for it to do so. And then you're waiting for Marla's film career to take off or Frank's real estate deal to come together, almost like in La La Land, where you have these two beautiful people, Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. They meet each other. It's wonderful. It's very romantic. But they both have ambitions. How are they going to reconcile these things? That's kind of what you feel it's building towards. I don't think it's giving too much away to say that neither of those things really kick in as a plot thread at all. And for me, it was realising that that is the point of this film rather than a problem with it. It is about the way that the minute you arrive in Hollywood, even as someone in your mid-20s, you feel that you're wasting your time, you feel you're already too old, your best days are behind you. And then as someone of Beatty's standing in the industry, who, he did arrive as this hot young pretty boy, as he describes himself, and then became this almost Hughes-like figure himself with this intimate knowledge of how the industry is churning away, doing these strange things in the background. It's a very, very strange thing to look back on your life and feel that you've had, 60 years of basically being past it. That's what the film for me is all about. So you have this very fast-paced structure, but for me it really comes together in these little lacunas of stillness that occur. One of them is at the start where it's set in the 1960s. It's a kind of a flash forward where Hughes is expected to be giving a press conference, and all we see of him is just this curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. He is this lever-pulling figure who is behind a screen. People are not supposed to see him. If they want to see him, he's to be seen on his own terms. And then often when we see him at the start of the film, he's a figure in shadow or he's a voice around a corner. He's very much in the background and working away behind the scenes. And then when he's introduced, you get these fantastic moments where there's a bit where he's walking down a pier with Alden Ehrenreich's character in the middle of the night. And it's just one very long take of these two characters sounding each other out through comic dialogue, And you can kind of see, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but I think Alden Ehrenreich has looked at the young Beatty's body language and use of gesture and is kind of reflecting that back against him. And there's a meaning to that scene that stands outside the meaning of it within the film, because in the film, it's a funny conversation that rambles around about this and that. But outside the film, you're looking at this young Beatty-like figure talking to the real Warren Beatty and having this kind of interaction across the generations in this beautiful piece of cinema. Similarly, the scene where Hughes seduces Lily Collins' character, Marla Mabry, in his bungalow, there are so many ways in which that film, in which that scene could have been icky and uncomfortable. Obviously, the enormous age gap between the two characters, the enormous power gap between the two characters. You've got a young girl coming to Hollywood with no connections who wants to be a film actress. And this guy who can make it all true, and maybe if she just plays along with him, it will all be okay. Now, I think it would be hard to make a film involving Howard Hughes without a scene like that. The scene isn't particularly critical of that setup. But the way in which it's staged, where you have her sitting at a piano, singing a really quite beautiful song, which shares a title with the film, And she is bathed in the light of a film projector that is running in the bungalow as well. And it's almost as if you have this old man looking back at what makes filmmaking all worth it, because she's a beautiful young woman giving a performance at a distance from him. So I think to kind of fully appreciate what's going on here, you have to see it as there's an element of autobiography in it as well. So I mean, the absolute most telling detail in this is that Hughes's fake biographer, Clifford Irving, which is what this press conference at the start of the film was going to be about, he claimed to have written this in-depth book with Hughes in which he got him to spill all of his secrets. And Hughes, because at that point he'd become mentally incapable, he couldn't remember collaborating on this book. And it's actually the story comes up in Orson Welles' film F for Fake, about this classic example of fakery. Beatty changes the name of that biographer from Clifford Irving to Miskin, and the guy who wrote the definitive Beatty autobiography is called Peter Biskind, and so it's Miskin said this, Miskin said that, Miskin said the next thing. All of this is wrong, and so he's finding himself in the character and talking about himself while not talking about himself. I have to say, having had time to let this film percolate, which it really needs, I am pretty in love with it at the moment. I think the two young leads are beautiful and have this wonderful kind of old-fashioned classic Hollywood acting style. The way in which they're shot by Caleb Deschanel, I think he's channeling Vittorio Storaro, who used to be Beatty's old cinematographer. Really kind of beautiful, perfectly lit classical Hollywood style of shooting. And if you understand it as it's nostalgia and it's coming to terms with a life lived in front of the camera and also behind it, then it makes perfect sense.